The Rand, the Rain and the Green Grass Plus Vision. I have been intending on writing this for the past few days and tying in current events with what Sina said about the future of South Africa and the world. There is a lot to cover in this video. I do not know how long it will be all over the place, but you will see the big picture. On the 26th of February 2020 I had a vision just as I was about to roll over and sleep. When it comes to the dream visions, I explained they come in two forms. One is very specific and the other deals with details which become clearer as the events play out. I am not sure about the visions. I have visions or the insights which I do not have years of experience with. They started last year, but I am still getting to grips with them. This vision I had on the 26th of February is of a very sensitive nature. I cannot say exactly what I want to say, but will have to put in such a way that it is not too obvious due to the ramifications of the contents of the vision. Let's get to the Rand, the Rains and the Green Grass. Sina van Rensburg mentioned we would have a drought, a severe drought in the country. This we had and it has come to pass. Now we have the rains, the green grass. For the first time in years there is massive rains and the grass is green. For those who know of the seer's prophecy about the green grass and what comes after it, I leave it out here due to the contents of those visions and the importance of them for the nation. Now I am going to tie the Rand dream in. The dream vision I had of the Rand crashing and what would be the result of that. I said, I saw the vision of the seers come to pass when the Rand collapses, that is, this time the nation will fight differently. Now let's tie this all in. In the dream vision of the Rand crashing, I saw a millie or cornfield with corn 2 stories high. Now the dream vision begins to come to life. The only way you have corn that reaches 2 stories is if you have abundant rains, hence the rains, the Rand and the green grass title of this post. The dream vision is telling and giving us a timeline. The rain has just finished falling and is still falling in some parts of the country. This tells us that the planting and sowing of millies or corn this year will result in an abundant harvest next year and the following year. Next year is when I believe the Rand will crash. It will crash just prior to the harvest of the corn. The harvest can either occur this year or next year. If my timing of this is correct, which I will say I am not 100% sure, I am simply looking at signs. Now let's tie this in with the Rand and the rains. We see the government financially is beyond bankrupt. We see Pfizer now in the Latin America is asking countries to put collateral down for their vaccines. In some cases they ask for government buildings and in other cases they ask for army bases. See the video on this channel. So what has the government in South Africa pledged for all these vaccines? Where did they get the money for the vaccines? I keep telling people, this is a vaccine race, a race by the superpowers. Do you think Russia just happened to name their vaccine Sputnik? This is a continuation of the Cold War, the space race, only this time it is through vaccines. The nations which side with Russia taking their vaccines will tell us who Russians' alliances and partners will be in the future. This will more than likely tie into what Sina said about Russia's plans to incite Africa in the future just as they are invading Europe. This will come about as the seer mentioned during our time of oppression. The government put the chains on the nation with their lockdowns in March 2020. I told you the nation, the Almighty God of Israel, sends a message. Your century of bondage will come undone in March 2020. That was sent to the nation 8 months before the lockdown occurred, where I told you something was going to happen that would release the nation. We do not need to know what concessions the government is making for these vaccines, we can see it. It has to the BIMF which is behind this, and before they lend the money to South Africa there are a number of conditions, and the two I see is a full expropriation without compensation bill and also Zuma's arrest. They have to clean out the corruption before they will lend them money. This ties into the vision I had just prior to sleep on the 26th of February. I do not write for the sake of it. I write to tell you and put my life on the line doing so because the information is putting you ahead of the curve and letting you know things which are not in the news yet. We now see Turkey is full steam ahead in Africa, we see the Sahel region becoming a hotbed, and we see France is pulling out of that region or considering it. This will push the European nations to southern Africa. I told this to you over a year ago on this channel. I told you Portugal will be in southern Africa, they are now fighting in Mozambique. I told this to you more than a year before it occurred. The pickaxe will go over the nation. It is going to happen not too long after these rains. Remember, when God told Moses to tell the Israelites he was leading them to the promised land, it did not happen in a week or even a month. It took 40 years before they reached the promised land, but he did take them out of bondage out of Egypt. And even from Egypt to the desert was not done overnight, and so it is with the chains coming undone. The date they would begin falling off was March 2020. Even once the Israelites were out of Egypt and in the desert, it took them another 40+ years to go to the land of Canaan. That was their punishment, that many would not see the promised land. Our promised land is the borders stretching to the equator. Fortunately, our chains have come undone, but it will be the next 2 generations who really get to live and experience the future Boer Republic stretching its borders. The Rand collapsing is part of the pickaxe vision of Van Rensburg coming over the nation. The two fit hand in hand together. That period is now. Never has this nation been stripped of so much, and the worse is still to come. This is the period of our oppression, and for how long it continues only God knows, for God's purposes. We can see the signs. NATO continues to provoke Russia, and it cannot be too far now that Russia invades Europe. We are only in March. Between March 2021 and May a lot can happen. We are very close to what the seer said would happen with Russia. The civil war the seer saw taking place in Russia is more than likely related to the former Soviet republics. We already had Armenia and Azerbaijan, and that will more than likely pick up at some point once again. I am pretty sure the race riots the seer spoke about hitting the UK will somehow be tied to the vaccine. With a population of 25% of the UK population who do not want to be vaccinated, it is going to be very difficult to push these minorities, soon to be majorities, to accept the vaccine, and this will kick off something there. When the Rand collapses, 20 million or so will head to Europe from southern Africa. It will more than likely be closer to the 30 million or more mark. If you doubt this, do you think they will find work in Namibia, Malawi, Mozambique or Zimbabwe? No, their future is in multicultural Europe. This is what they get for interfering in the Boers' affairs in South Africa, and all the nations which opposed us will have the wrath of God on them. Just look at the state of affairs of every country that put sanctions on us. Are they in a better position or worse position? That is the curse of the Almighty upon those nations for lying about us. They think they are all powerful with their might, their armies, their propaganda. There is no plan that can succeed against the Almighty. So we see our backs are against the wall right now. The oppression is before us. It is pitch black. We cannot see before our hands, as the seer said. The under the cover of darkness dream vision is still ongoing, since we are not free from complete lockdowns and the restrictions put in place that began in March 2020. The grass is now green, the economy is in free fall and free for all. My 2 previous dream visions. One of a ledger book comparing the old South Africa to the new South Africa, and that the old South Africa ledger side of the book was in positive while the new South Africa was in negative. That was telling us at some point in the future, when they get involved in South Africa, they will compare the 2 ledger books, and this is where Zuma fits in. In order for them to fix the ledger book, Zuma has to go, but Zuma is going to do what Mandela told the SACP and Arm Wing to do. Remember, Mandela told his people if the government, in reference to the new government, the new ruling party, the ANC, should ever do to them what the National Party did to the blacks, then the blacks must do to the government, meaning the ANC, what the blacks did to the National Party. In other words, they must continue their struggle should the ANC ever do to them what the National Party did to them. The black nations do not realize their struggle for freedom is the same struggle of the whites in South Africa. Both are fighting colonialism. We as settlers did not wish to domineer the blacks. We did not wish to take their ancestral lands, and they were fighting against colonialism, which is exactly what the Boers were fighting against during the Boer War. This time, the ANC is working with this new form of colonialism in the form of global international finance, the International Monetary Fund, and all this is going to be ushered in. In other words, now the ANC is beginning to do to its own members what the old National Party did to them. The assets of the country have been pledged against all the interests of the people in South Africa, and why? Did the seer not tell us why? Why, of course, they have set this up beautifully. All the ANC policies were designed to bring the country to this point. Their policies were designed to bankrupt the nation, all the while they built up revolutionary forces on the other side to keep on shaking down, psychologically bullying the whites to hand over everything through threats of intimidation and violence. The revolutionaries are also being set up to step in if the ruling party does not follow the plans and objectives of the elites getting involved in the background in South Africa. So Cyril has to clean up shop. He has to take certain people to the cleaners before they get access to their money to keep the country afloat. The ANC have made sure the pensions are tapped last before this to maintain some control of the situation and not need these outside masters. This is where the Rand comes in. Both the ANC and the internationalists will crash it. If the ANC do not follow along, the internationalists will crash it through more serious strains of viral disinformation about the virus and new strains, and of course through downgrades. The ANC know full well this will take place, so they will tap the pension funds, but this will have the exact same result, and then it is all over. So you can see at this point, there is no getting out of this. The Rand will crash. It is not a matter of if but when. The Dream Vision gave us an indication of the million cornfields, and this could only come about through rains, and did not the seer say when the rains begin to fall and the grass gets green? It is at this stage, through the orchestrated events, that some revolution will kick off due to employment issues